Everybody talks about price crashes like they're the only reason a major holder ever dumps their position. But what if the real threat has nothing to do with price at all? We need to talk about the scenarios that nobody puts in their risk models. The ones that force a sale, whether the market is up, down, or completely sideways. Think of a structured seller like a corporation holding a large asset position on its balance sheet. They're not just a trader. They're an institution with regulators, creditors, legal counsel, and shareholders, all breathing down their neck simultaneously. When any one of those relationships breaks down, the asset becomes collateral damage in a fight that started somewhere else entirely. Let's start with the regulatory trigger, because this one hits like a freight train and almost nobody sees it coming. Imagine a government agency freezes your assets pending investigation. It doesn't matter if you're profitable, it doesn't matter if the market is rallying, you literally cannot touch those holdings, and the legal resolution could take months or years. We've seen this playbook before in traditional finance, where firms have had accounts frozen mid-quarter because of sanctions, exposure, or compliance failures they didn't even know existed. The scary part is that regulatory actions rarely telegraph themselves. One day you're a corporate treasury holding a clean balance sheet. The next day, you're in a hearing explaining why your custodian had exposure to a sanctioned entity. Then there's the outright ban scenario, which sounds extreme until you remember that entire jurisdictions have done exactly that with specific asset classes in recent memory. When a regulatory body moves to prohibit holding, trading, or even reporting a certain class of assets, the institutional response isn't debate, it's liquidation, and it happens at whatever price the market will bear at that moment. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Let's talk about custodian insolvency, which is the counterparty risk that most corporate holders deeply underestimate. If the institution safeguarding your assets becomes insolvent or gets seized by regulators, your legal claim to those assets can get tangled in bankruptcy proceedings for years. And the practical outcome is a forced sale at the worst possible time. This isn't hypothetical hand-wringing. We've watched custodial failures cascade through financial systems before, and the entities that survived were the ones that had distributed their holdings across multiple counterparties and maintained contingency liquidity. The ones who trusted a single custodian because of cost efficiency or convenience found out the hard way that efficiency is expensive when things break. Then there's the one that really doesn't get discussed enough, the operating business cash flow crisis, forcing asset liquidation with zero relation to the asset's performance. Picture a corporation that holds a significant position in a long-term asset, but their core business hits a sudden revenue shortfall, payroll, debt covenants, supplier payments don't pause because your balance sheet asset is up 20%. The CFO doesn't call a board meeting to debate conviction levels. They liquidate what's liquid, regardless of timing, regardless of market conditions, and regardless of whether every analyst on earth says hold. This is why institutional position sizing relative to operating cash reserves is the unsexy risk metric that separates sophisticated corporate treasurers from the ones who end up in case studies. Legal judgments are another non-price trigger that most retail observers completely ignore, and the irony is almost darkly comedic. A corporation can have a perfectly functioning asset portfolio and get hit with a judgment in an unrelated lawsuit that requires them to post cash or assets immediately, effectively forcing a liquidation that the market interprets as a bearish signal, when really it's just a lawyer winning a case in a courtroom 3 states away. Here's the historical lesson that keeps getting relearned every single cycle. Diversification of counterparty risk and liquidity reserves aren't optional features. They're structural requirements for any entity holding significant positions. The firms that build in redundancy, maintain relationships with multiple custodians, and keep operating cash buffers separate from investment positions consistently survive the non-price shocks that wipe out everyone focused only on market direction. The practical takeaway for you watching this is that when you see a large structured holder liquidating in a flat or rising market, your first question shouldn't be, what do they know about price? It should be, what regulatory, legal, or counterparty event just forced their hand? Understanding the difference between panic selling and structured forced selling changes how you interpret market signals entirely and helps you avoid overreacting to moves that have nothing to do with fundamental value. Discipline in reading these situations, proper sizing of your own exposure relative to your liquidity needs, and a consistent process for evaluating counterparty risk will serve you infinitely better than trying to predict market direction alone. The investors and institutions that last through multiple cycles aren't necessarily the smartest ones in the room. They're the ones who built systems that survive surprises they never specifically anticipated. At the end of the day, the market doesn't care about your conviction level, your thesis, or how right you were in theory. It only rewards those who prepared rationally for outcomes they were comfortable surviving. Whether the position works out or not almost matters less than whether your structure, sizing, and contingency planning kept you in the game long enough to be there when it does. And if you want help getting started, whether it's real estate investing, home contracting work, or finding the right lenders, check out our links in the description below.